What's going on, guys? Welcome to my channel. I'm pretty new to this. My name is Dominic, and I think I'm gonna name it Trucking with Dom. All right. Nonetheless, welcome, and let's talk about some stuff. So when I initially reached out to Prime, it was like January of 2020, and that was before the world was like the crazy place that it is now. And I had applied. My recruiter, his name was Derek Stevenson. Like, Derek was like so helpful and so informative, and like anything that ever happened, like he kept me in the loop. Like I never felt like I just like submitted my information and nobody got back to me. Like I put in my app, I think it was on like a Friday. I got a call Monday morning from Derek, and if I'm not mistaken, I actually think it was a little bit before that. It may have even been like Friday evening or something. But when I had spoken to Derek, he was telling me what's going on. He was like, all right, cool, I'm a good candidate. I have clean work history. I had a Class B license at the time. So like when I came into Prime, I went through the PSD phase. I actually just finished my PSD phase. I'm not transitioning into the TNT phase. So I'm still a student in a sense, but like I'm actually a Prime employee. So like I'm on the books as an employee of Prime. But nonetheless, I had applied in January. Don't mind the mess. I got up a little while ago. I don't really do housekeeping. I normally make my bed myself, but I felt like this was more important. But I had applied in January. My initial time that I was shooting to start for was for March. But because I lived in New York City, and like at the time that was the epicenter for the coronavirus, Prime stopped hiring. They actually enacted a hiring freeze. So at that point, my recruiter Derek called me. He was like, "Hey Dom, we had already developed like a very good relationship because like we were always talking, like always corresponding back and forth." So he says to me, "Hey Dom, because of where you live and because of like the current climate of the world, we're putting a hold on your application." I was bummed out. Like I was bummed out. I was tight. I was a little upset, but ultimately I understood what was happening. And realistically speaking, like they're trying to keep themselves safe and they're trying to keep me safe. So it's just like, if I would have been a dormant carrier of the virus and I would have came out here, I could have possibly like infected like half of Springfield. But that wasn't the case. I was never exposed to the virus, and I was actually home quarantining anyway because my job actually stopped me from working. At the time I was a school bus driver, but that's a whole other story for a whole other video. But the hiring freeze was for a couple of months. I was shooting from March. I ultimately didn't start until August, the end of August. So I was keeping tabs on Prime's like social media platforms like Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, things like that, and they were like periodically giving updates as to what was going on. One day I was actually on Instagram and I saw like a Q&A, and I believe this was in like August time, and there was a lady like answering questions. I'm like, oh snap, let me tune in. So I tuned in, and the lady, her name was actually Andrea Mueller. She's like a social media like specialist or like a social media outreach person for Prime. So she was like basically answering people's questions. So I said, hey, when will Prime begin hiring out of New York City? She said, we started already. However, the orientation process is a bit different, which is obviously understandable. So I was like, all right, cool. So like I didn't like hit up my recruiter yet because I was actually working at a car dealership selling cars at the time, because I'm like, I can't drive buses. I don't want to drive buses, so I had to re-strategize. So re-strategizing, went back to the car dealership, sold cars, did that for a little bit, hated it, didn't like it at all, but you gotta do what you gotta do to get by. I believe a day or two later, Derek actually called me. He said, hey Dominic, we're actually beginning to open up the hiring process again, and I know you're actually in the process of coming out. I'm like, hey, cool, yeah, absolutely. He says, when do you anticipate on starting? And I was like, I want to start as soon as I can. He was like, I have openings for these particular days. So I selected August 29th. So between the day of the live, 2 days or so after the live video that I watched, and August 29th, that was maybe 3 or 4 weeks. Within that time period, I put in my notice on my job. I went to do my DOT, I went to do my medical, I went to get set up to come to Prime. Because of where I was coming from, I wasn't permitted to fly in, and I wasn't permitted to take a Greyhound. Ironically, I used to work for Greyhound as a driver, so that kind of bummed me out too. So I drove from New York City to Springfield, Missouri. It was about an 18-hour drive for the most part, I drove all the way through. I stopped in Ohio. I took about an hour break. On the way through, it was like raining in like most of the country like that I came through. So like at one point, like the windshield wiper of my car on the right side flew off, so I had to stop in Ohio anyway to get a new windshield wiper. Ended up buying a whole brand new set, and I was in the AutoZone parking lot. I was there for about an hour, took a nap, got back on the road, jumped back on 80, and continued westbound. Continued all the way in through like the bottom portion of Illinois into Missouri. I stopped at a Love's. I took a 2-hour nap. I timed myself. I took a 2-hour nap, and I just drove the rest of the way through. And that was about 4 or 5 hours coming from there. From where I was, it was about 4 or 5 hours into Springfield. Once I got into Springfield, I actually misread the email, so I ended up at like the main terminal, which was like amazing, but it was like super overcast and stuff, so like I was like kind of bummed out. It was like a gloomy day when I got here, but nonetheless, I got to the gate. The guy said, "Hey, how are you? How can I help you?" I said, "Hey, I'm here for orientation." He said, "Oh, you're at the wrong place. You have to go to the Campus Inn." So the Campus Inn was about 2 miles down the road. I'm just like, okay, cool, whatever. I was super tired. Wanted to come in anyway. Wanted to shower and like unwind and stuff. So I checked in, and I was told that because where I was coming from, I had to quarantine. I already knew that, so they put me in a special quarantine wing. So like once I got to the quarantine wing, I unpacked my car, I brought all my food and all my clothes, like all my electronics and stuff like that. I even brought a PlayStation because I knew I was gonna be bored, so I did that. Once I got to the campus and got all my stuff, went to quarantine. While in quarantine, they gave us like an itinerary. They gave us a bunch of documents to review. They gave us an additional application to fill out to just like verify all of our stuff, and like anything we may have missed on our initial application, we just like included it in, so like everything was current and active. So we did that. Each day we had like a virtual orientation at like 8 a.m. and fortunately that same orientation was with Andrew Mueller. So she was like guiding us through the process, letting us know what we had to do, like getting us like certified on various things like CBTs and stuff like that, and we did that. On Thursday, if I'm not mistaken, I think it was like September 3rd, 4th, or 5th, one of those days, maybe even the 2nd. A doctor came in. He took a COVID-19 test. He swabbed both of our nasal cavities. It was like, for me, it wasn't really uncomfortable, but it burned after the fact. But we got our results back that same day. All of my my classmates and I, it was about 20 of us. I'm sorry, it was about 27, 28 of us in quarantine. We got our results back. Thankfully, everybody came back negative, so like that was great. So the very next day we went to the orientation office. We did orientation check-in. They verified all of our IDs. They verified our work history. They gave us our prime badges. They got us all set and good to go. That same day, we went to the simulator lab. So we did like a little bit of simulator driving. The next day we did our simulator test. We all passed it with flying colors. We all got I think the lowest person had like 80 or something like that. And then I began making friends. So I particularly were hanging out with 3 guys, Kamani, Rontrell, and Tarek. Trell's from Michigan, Kamani's from Georgia, and Tarek is from Detroit, and I'm from New York. So like we all instantly clicked. We all had fun. We were just like being guys, hanging out, all that stuff, like going to Walmart together, going to the Millennium Building together, like exercising, playing ball, all that stuff. We all got set up. Once that was done, the next portion of the process was to go to the pad. I could never remember the name of the building that the pad is attached to, but we went to the pad. That's where we first got introduced to like an actual truck. We began to practice our backing maneuvers and stuff, and we met our trainers there. The first trainer I worked with was a gentleman by the name of Z. I don't know his whole name, but we called him Z. He was such a cool guy. Like he was like telling us about what to expect for the pre-trip, what to expect for the road test, how to behave with our trainers, like what kind of trucks are here at Prime, like all like the necessary information that we needed just to get by and like get familiar with the equipment. So we did that. I met my PhD trainer later in the day. My PhD trainer was Blake Tubbs, so like my guy was like the YouTuber, which was like really, really cool because like everything that he portrays in his videos, that's his real personality, you know? And it was great. Like hanging out with Blake was nice. We actually hung out outside of work, and it was just like, it was a great experience. Like that guy, Blake, A1 since day one. Like I feel like I've known him since I was back home in the hood, but that's not the point. I was with Blake for 2 weeks. We went from here to Kansas City at one point, but for the most part, we stayed here in Springfield. So like we're on the pad, we're around Springfield doing driving, like driving with a trailer, practicing our maneuvers, doing our brake test, real world scenarios, things like that, doing all that type of stuff. And time passed by, my road test came. Being that I had a Class B CDL, I already knew how to drive. I'm not gonna say I was the best driver, but I knew how to drive. Like I was working for Greyhound and like all these other bus companies, so I knew how to drive. My biggest like concern was the pre-trip. The reason why it wasn't more so the vehicle, it was more so like the trailer and all the components of, well, I'm lying, it was actually the truck. It was like not like the under the hood portion, but like the tire area, the coupling area, like the connection between the trailer and the tractor, things like that were my concern. I took my road test yesterday at 7 a.m. with an instructor named Eric. Eric was like, how can I describe Eric? Eric was like, first of all, he was a very stand-up person. Like I respect him. He was very nice. He was very professional to me. When I initially met him, I thought he was gonna like bust my balls, but that was the exact opposite. He was very cool, very straightforward. He was actually very friendly. Like while I was road testing, like once we actually got on the road and like I did my pre-trip and I did my backing maneuvers, we got on the road. Like I didn't even feel like I was road testing. Like he and I engaged in conversation, and it was like fairly good. It was like great conversation, and like we were talking. Like I told him like a little bit about my background. He told me about his, and he basically told me that I made the right choice coming to Prime. But backtracking, coming out of a hotspot area to Prime, they're going to take all the necessary precautions to make sure that they protect themselves as a company and they protect you as a person before you're even an employee, because you're technically not an employee until you get a purple Prime badge. So coming in as PSD, you're coming in pretty much like on like an apprenticeship, but the idea is to prepare you to become an employee. In order for you to become an employee, you have to be a Class A CDL holder. But coming in from a hotspot, the process, I'm not going to say it's delayed by 5 days, but they want to make sure that you're not exhibiting any symptoms, so you don't bring any symptoms onto the property. And in that sense, you're not spreading anything. But hotspot employees, and what hotspot employees to be, they're going to do their due diligence to make sure that they protect you as a person. And once you finish your quarantine, you transition them just like anyone else, and they set you up for success. And that's all I have for you. Like I said, I'm new to this, so bear with me. I'm gonna practice, I'm gonna finesse it, but I just wanted to give like a little bit of my story because I feel like I had a little bit of insight that was different from the average YouTuber, only because I went through the quarantine portion of the orientation. All right, guys, holla at you. Like truthfully, like I think it's a great company to work for. Like Prime is like really like one of those mega carriers that they're not the average mega carrier. Like you're not a number, you're somebody, and like you actually matter. And yeah, like I came here during like the whole pandemic, and like my situation was a bit different from the average candidate who comes here, but they took care of me and they made sure that I was good and like I was straight. And it's just like, I appreciate that, you know? Like Prime, they're here to make it work for me, and as long as I'm here, I'm gonna do what I have to do to become successful, and I'm cool with that. Like I'm so cool with that. I'm ready to meet new people, I'm ready to go to new places, I'm ready to do new things. And I'm just gonna continue to make this work for me.
Oh, get out and look. Pull your brakes. He's getting mad because he's about to mess some stuff up. Bro, what is you talking about, bro? You about to smack this thing. You about to smack. He ain't even started turning the truck yet. Bro, you about to smack this thing.
I have more space on that side. I have more space on that side of the truck. I'm gonna line it up and I'm gonna swing it in. I have plenty of space on this side of the truck.
Oh, God. So where you trying to put it at?
I'm putting it right here.
You think so? So you're not trying to go here?
No,